Hey, everybody, and welcome to Ben and Nate's Questions That We Ask People on the Internet. I'm one half of your host, Nate Fay. I'm a licensed massage therapist with over 20 years of private practice. I'm also an osteopath as well as a master myoskeletal therapist. And when I'm not in my private practice, I'm on the road presenting for Eric Dalton and the Freedom from Pain Institute.
Hey everyone, I am the other half of your co-host, Ben Stone. I've been a licensed massage therapist for over 20 years. I have a wide range of experience in the massage world, from working as an employee to owning my own massage practice where we employed several massage therapists. I hold the title of Master Myoskeletal Therapist, and I value learning above all else, and that's why I love making this show with Nate. And hey Nate, we have a disclaimer alert.
Disclaimer alert, disclaimer alert.
The opinions and views shared on the Nate and Ben Show are our own and do not represent the opinions of any other person or organization that we may be affiliated with, work for, or contract with. The main purpose of this show is for entertainment and education, and if you feel that you are entertained or educated in any way, please let us know.
Hey, everybody, and welcome to Ben and Nate's Questions That We Ask People on the Internet. And we are at episode 14 tonight, which is super exciting. And we try to make every episode a little special in some way. And for tonight's episode 14, outside of our question of the week, Ben and I are going to share a slice of pizza together. Here we are.
Tell us what kind of pizza you got going on, Nate.
So this is a gluten-free. Some people might get a little beat up over gluten-free pizza, but it's a gluten-free bacon cheeseburger pizza.
Ooh.
Made locally at Summers, Connecticut Pizza up the street. One of our favorite places to grab pizza from. How about you?
I got a Costco special, and this is a cauliflower crust pizza, and it's the meat lovers style. So it's got pepperoni and some other kind of meats in it, bacon and something else. So we both went with the meats, it looks like.
We went with the meats, but we reduced that calorie load by either going, as you said, this is a true gluten-free crust, and you went cauliflower.
Yeah.
And Costco is the only place where you can get lunch for $1.50.
Isn't it great?
A hot dog and a soda.
Well, hey, speaking of pizza, I was thinking, do you want to hear a pizza joke?
I want to hear a pizza joke, and I bet our listeners want to hear one too.
Nah, I don't know. Never mind. It'd probably be too cheesy. Let me ask you, though, what's the difference between a good pizza joke and a bad pizza joke?
What's the difference between a good pizza joke and a bad pizza joke?
The delivery.
That's right.
Yeah.
I like
All
it.
right. So here's the pizza joke, because I led up to the pizza joke. And so now we're going to actually get into the pizza joke. What did the Dalai Lama say when he walked into the pizza parlor?
What did he say when he walked in?
Make me one with everything.
That was a triple whammy tonight.
Oh, yeah. I put some effort into that one.
It was good. You put effort into them every time. Hey, pizza brings people together.
That it does.
And massage therapy brings many people together.
I think also Ben and Nate's Questions We Ask People on the Internet brings people together.
Sure the heck does. And like massage and manual therapy, there's all different types of pizzas that you can take when either making or ordering your pizza. Isn't that right?
That's right.
How the heck have you been? What's happening in your world in Nebraska?
Oh, man. We talked about this a little bit off air already. It was 81 degrees yesterday, and now it's snowing today. I'm just getting over a cold. It's cold and flu season, and so I'm a little stuffy, but I'm glad to be feeling back to normal. How about you? How's things been in your end of the US?
Not quite in the 80s, but we hit temps of, I think, mid 60s today. And it's actually going to stay that way through the rest of the week. So we're going to stay in that range at least through Sunday, but we're going to get apparently torrential rain tomorrow, which will wash away any remaining snow that we have in our neck of the woods. And much like you, I had a nasty little cold last week. It didn't take me out, though. The timing of this one was good. It kind of started Friday after my day of clients, took me through the weekend, and I was just about, it was a bad one, but it was a quick one.
Isn't that great when you get sick on the weekend so you don't have to miss work? It's such a great thing, isn't it?
All the joys of being self-employed, right?
Yeah.
But hey, I'm not punching the clock, so
That's right.
Well, I sort of am. What's cooking? What's cooking with our viewers this week? And what are we talking about with our viewers this week?
We got episode 14 and we're talking about therapeutic tools. So let me read you the question that we're discussing this week. Let's talk therapeutic tools, cupping, IASTM, which is instrument assisted soft tissue mobilization, massage guns, and the like. Do you use them? And if so, what would be the benefits to using something in place of your hands? Are your therapeutic outcomes different? And the bonus question is, how do you explain the why behind using therapeutic tools? There's a lot going on in this question. A lot of
That was a lot.
a lot. So tell me, I always like to ask you, what's the reason behind why you wanted to ask this question?
Well, I got to thinking about my career and, I thought about the different tools that I've used in my career and they've sort of, for me personally, they've like come and gone. There was a time, I guess we could consider kinesiotape a tool that we would use, a therapeutic tool. And there was a time that I sort of got into kinesiotaping for a short time. And even before that, in the early part of my career, when I used to work with a chiropractor, he used a lot of tools. This wasn't like in the early to mid 2000s, vibrational machines, the clicker that they used to sort of do,
The
different
activator.
type of adjustments, the activator. Thanks. I was lost on the word for that for a minute. Different tools like that, muscle stim, which would be considered a tool. And in the early part of my career, I thought, man, like I should use these things. I don't know. And anytime I got a tool in my hand, so to speak, I just never liked it because I just always thought to myself personally, I can't feel what I'm doing. And the other thing for me too, before we sort of dive into this as well, is there was a time early on, probably in your career too, where I really felt a lot of these things were only available to the therapist, to the practitioner. And then there was sort of this like video killed the radio star moment where it was almost like anyone could get their hands on them. CVS was selling kinesiotape. You could buy cupping sets. People could do this on themselves, muscle stim pads. However, right, I think there could be a use for tools. And I know that there's plenty of people that like them out there. And so I wanted to have that discussion tonight.
Well, I think that's a great idea behind wanting to ask this question. So let's talk about maybe some of the people who responded. Do you have any particular favorites? We had a few people respond. I liked what I saw, but I want to ask you, what did you like out of the people who responded?
There was one of them that I liked in particular. What I liked is actually the way he finished up his answer. This comes from one of our listeners, Gavin C. And I like how he finished up, right? There's a component of client expectations when we, as he says, bust out those tools and have this believed outcome. Good work is going to be done. But he also backs it up with, it feels good. And if it feels good, it is good. So I liked his response from sort of a client perspective on that. Then we had other people, a lot of people talked about the different types of tools they use. Most people mentioned that they use percussion. The slang term is maybe like massage guns and something along those lines. And again, some of those answers were along the lines of, clients that like them, kind of giving reasoning behind the client likes it. One thing that was interesting to me, and I do want to talk about this, is almost everybody said it's a good way to save your hands. And I want to come back to that comment and let you jump in.
That's interesting. You just threw me a curve because now I'm thinking about hands and how I need to save my hands. But going back to these tools, looking at everyone's answer in general, a lot of people just mentioned, hey, we're looking at working with the body and creating a sensation in the body. And it's not necessarily that we're trying to break down scar tissue or do something special, which I was expecting to see something like that, breaking down
Right.
scar tissue. And, I had a story in my head and I'm going to share it anyway, but I was at a pro section lab where we got to dive into cadavers. And I came across a, what do you call it? It's a pacemaker. Came across pacemaker wire that was encapsulated in scar tissue. And I mean, this stuff was thick and strong. And I know wire encapsulated in scar tissue is different than scar tissue that we're going to have in tendinous or musculotendinous structures, but it just gave me an idea of what this scar tissue looks like. So this wire was kind of looped a little bit. They put that in there for redundancy in case there's any tug on the wire. But as I was checking out this structure and how strong and tough it was, I experimented with trying to pull the wire out from, I just figured it would slide out. It was bonded to the scar tissue. There was no way to get that wire out unless you were going to cut it out or somehow scrape it out. I mean, it was stuck. So then I think about, how are we going to take a tool and break down this scar tissue through the skin, mind you, and whatever other tissue that we have? That picture in my head just gives me an idea of how tough scar tissue is. What are your thoughts on that?
My initial thought is, yeah, any time that I've attended any sort of dissection or prosection lab, as you stated, it just makes you much more aware of a massage therapist. And sometimes I sit back and ask myself the question, like you did, am I really touching that muscle? Am I really affecting that in the way that we've sort of have been led to believe? And then I proactively ask myself the question, do I really want to necessarily break that down? Is there like a reason for that? What if a tool could break that, in your description, break that down, and all of a sudden the person has a massive problem? That's a very hypothetical sort of situation. But sometimes I think the idea as massage therapists of breaking something down or quote unquote releasing something may not always be the best idea in the moment. But that's a whole different podcast, probably.
That is, and we always end up,
Let's get a little crazy there.
yeah,
Must be the pizza tonight.
it could be. Let's talk about saving hands. Are you ready to dive into that yet?
Okay, yeah, let's just go for it now. That's totally fine.
Because I wanted a piece of pizza anyway.
Yeah, you go. Okay. So for those listening tonight, Ben and I are volleying back and forth, and as I talk, he's eating his pizza, and vice versa here. So we hope that you're eating your pizza tonight while you're listening to us. So one of the common things, and I've heard this over the years, right? Save your hands. Do this to save your hands. In the early part of my career, I was like, oh my God, I better do this to save my hands. I think the first continuing education class I took was how to go deep and still save your hands. And it was sort of a take on like Ashiatsu bar therapy, right? But instead of like being on the bars, you could sit on a stool, you can prop yourself up on the table, so it was a sort of a take on that. And by the way, just because the tool can be more than the massage gun, the tool can be more than a cup, more than kinesio tape, right? There's so many different ways to even define tools. And our hands are essentially a tool or an extension of us. But anyway, saving your hands. So I thought, well, I better save my hands so that I can have a long career. But then I thought to myself, as I would invest in tools and then just either throw them to the side and let them collect dust or throw them away, I thought to myself, why don't I just get better at like using my hands and using my body? And by the way, so the best tool that I can safely say, and this is a tool, the best tool that I ever bought and will last with me the length of my career and was worth every dollar, was my electric high-low table. And that is a tool. It is a tool of the trade. And my table works for me and works in a way that is therapeutically valuable for my clients. I think the hype of saving your hands I think it's a lot of hype. And I think it's just a buzz term or a buzz phrase that seems to be perpetuated throughout our career. And I can only speak for me that when I teach my classes, I say to people, hey, let's get good at understanding how to apply the technique. What I found is that when I'm evaluating therapists' touch, that a lot of them are death gripping and just using so much force that they almost don't even realize that they're using. And I know that there's more to it than that, but that's just a quick observation that I find across the board.
Yeah, and so that touch gets evolves over time with experience. And then
For
also
sure.
something we talked about in a previous episode is, how do we get better? What are the things that we do? We do work with coaches, we do work with mentors, we do continuing education classes to evolve. And you brought up the table as a tool. And I thought that was interesting because, you wouldn't think of that right off top of your head. But I also think communication is a tool that we use.
Yeah.
That helps us deliver the work where it needs to be and maybe where it could be most helpful. So then the question I'm thinking about is, what are some of the tools that you have used, and why did you decide to use those tools?
Well, early on, I think the very first tool, being part of a chiropractic clinic, the big thing that we used there was a vibrational tool. So that back then it was something called the G5. And actually, I think one of our listeners mentioned using the G5. Yeah, a gentleman by the name of Jonathan, who also had a really nice answer. And I haven't seen the term G5 used for 18 years. So I thought that was pretty cool that he mentioned that. So it was like the sander thing. And I mean, it was like a belt sander. People love that thing. They knew that their adjustment was over when, my colleague was sanding their back down. So I thought, well, that would be an interesting thing. When I'm done with my massage, I would steal his G5 and, people loved it. It was just an extension of the session. People loved it. And I eventually invested in a different type of massage gun, if you will, called the Theracusser, which was more commonly used in the chiropractic community. And it had about 12 different settings on it and different heads on it. And I used that for a while, but once again, I started to sort of lose sight of that. I couldn't make sense of it. My clients were just, everyone was telling me they bought their own massage gun. So it just sort of seemed like, yeah, I'm taking up session time by using something that they could do at home. So that was one tool that I used for a little while. And then I got into kinesio taping, which I think, I don't think anyone mentioned kinesio taping in the responses, but I mean, kinesio tape it's a tool, right? It's something that you're going to apply as an extension of your hands for a potential therapeutic purpose. I was into that for a while. I took a nice extensive class. I took the traditional, back then it was a traditional Kenzo Kase method. Yeah, it was a long time ago. Yeah, it was with like a lot of PT. So it was certainly an informative class. It was well presented and I was all about it. And, then CVS started selling it and clients were just coming in and asking me how they should apply their tape. And I said, well, let people mummy themselves up if they want to do that. And with that being said, as I'm going through my own list here, Ben, it was also the sort of like the outcomes of, and I was also really finding that my outcomes weren't too much different. There was a time period where some, well-known athletes came onto the scene with very circular looking hickeys, if you will, all over their body. And that kicked off, with the layperson, the whole cupping craze, even though cupping or some form of cupping has probably been around for a lot longer than I even know the answer to that. So I got into cupping for a half a second. And, the reasonings behind that, are we drawing out some of the interesting things that people said? We're drawing out what, like stagnant blood or whatever the case is. And I thought, man, that sounds cool on paper. But then I thought to myself, that doesn't make sense, and do I want to do that? And I just felt like I was like bruising people. And by the way, for some of you out there, I know that there's a way to do cupping without bruising people, and it's probably the right way to do it as an application or as an extension. But once again, it just became an extension of my hands that I thought I can't feel what I'm doing. I'm losing touch, no pun intended, with a client, and just felt sort of lost in my sessions.
Yeah, that's interesting. Do you think so? One of our viewers mentioned these tools in the hands of an experienced professional are more effective than in the hands of an amateur. What are your thoughts on the difference between a professional applying the tools versus someone, say, at home applying cupping?
Well, that's interesting. We talked about this a few episodes ago, right? When we talked about modalities and people getting results. I practice osteopathy and myoskeletal alignment technique, and I get fantastic results. My friend on the other side of the country practices muscle testing and, muscle testing modalities and gets fantastic results. They're a skilled practitioner. I'd like to think I'm a skilled practitioner so that we get good results, right? So a modality in the hands of a skilled practitioner could work. If I'm a layperson and I apply kinesio tape to myself and I go to a pro like yourself and you apply kinesio tape to me, is my result going to be much different? I don't know. My guess is what's between my ears is going to feel that there's a difference. I don't know. What do you think?
There's so many different layers to influencing that therapeutic outcome. And part of it may be the idea of someone being an expert in being trained in and having experience in applying kinesio tape. So you think of that professional, okay, this person knows how to do it, so therefore it's going to be more effective. That could be one of the layers behind how we influence whether people notice a change or not. I think there's so many different ways we could go with that.
I think there is too. That's a tough one. If you offer what you offer, I do use tools. I use my table as a tool, listening, communication. I use my hands as an extension, as a tool, if you will. If you don't offer tools, cupping, IASTM, also known as Graston for those out there, vibrational guns, and the laundry list goes on, and people only know what they know, and you're getting good results, right? You're getting good results. And if I come into you with low back pain and you're quote unquote busting out all your tools, you're using your hands on me, then you're throwing some cups on me, then you're taping me up, and then you're hitting me with a massage gun. In my head, I might think as a client, geez, do I need all that to get better? I would imagine as an elite athlete, I would think that to win that, I also might be influenced by the sort of shiny buttons, if you will, by potentially needing all those things every time to be at the top of my game.
Yeah, so here's something that I'm thinking about is, and we talked about this in past episodes, there is an expectation when you go see a massage therapist, you're expecting soft tissue manipulation. You go to chiropractor, you're expecting joint manipulation. You go to PT, you're expecting some type of treatment. So you go
Right.
see a massage therapist and they bust out the tools and they scrape you and cup you and do all these things that could be potentially good. It all depends on how it's presented also. Hey, I want to try this approach with you because I think it's going to do whatever. You get that informed consent, you do some education, and you get that person, on board with the idea. That's probably going to help it be more effective.
I think so. I think you're right about that, and give a good reasoning, as to why you might use something along those lines. I think there's certainly, I'm sure there's plenty of clients out there that just specifically seek that type of work out. Just like you specialize in a modality and I do as well. There's plenty of therapists that I'm sure just do beautiful and incredible work, cupping sessions and instrument assisted sessions. Actually, one of my colleagues, Scott Raymond, that's his whole niche, and he's got a huge fan base.
Yeah, if you're good at doing something, people are going to gravitate toward you if they feel like that is going to be helpful for them. And we also have things we like to do. So, me being a manual therapist or a massage therapist, I like doing massage work. I don't particularly enjoy applying tools, but I learn about them because I want to know what they can
Sure.
do and what they can't do. And so when someone comes to me and says, "Yeah, I bought this cupping set and I've been cupping myself," I know what are the potential benefits and hazards to cupping, and I can maybe guide them a little bit. I get that information on cupping, on scraping, on massage guns. I learn about all that, but I don't really offer it. Every once in a while, I'll offer it in my office, but not a lot. Also, I'm not a big fan of having it done to me, really. I mean, I've had cupping done, I've had scraping. I'm just not a big fan of it. When I go to get massage work, I want to get massage work.
We've talked about this too. One of the cool things about being a massage therapist, there's a lot of cool things I think, but one of the cool things is that we have time with our clients. And I often find, at least in my experience, I find that practitioners that are using tools, like we'll use the slang, the scraping work or cupping work or taping, are typically practitioners that have much shorter sessions. So oftentimes I'll hear from my clients, I saw my chiropractor last week and he thought I needed some scraping on the back of my between my shoulder blades. Said between my shoulder blades was really tight, so he did that scrapey thing, or he did some cupping on me, or she did some cupping on me. Something along those lines, where there's a much sort of maybe a need for a different type of treatment, but not necessarily the time to dive into hands-on work.
And so we've talked about some of this in the past, and it's about not necessarily the techniques that we use, but how we create some sort of sensation in the central nervous system? How are we affecting that person? Are we getting to the things that are going to be most helpful for them? So using these tools may be just another approach to getting to those, scratching that itch or just getting to that, whatever that person feels like is going to be most helpful. And in some of my reading in getting ready for this episode, I came across something interesting that I'd heard before, but I kind of forgot about it. It has to do with putting people under anesthesia. So imagine someone with severe kyphosis. They look like a prawn. They're just like
Yeah.
totally curled forward.
As I sit up straight.
As you put them on the operating table, say, and put them under anesthesia, guess what happens? Their back goes completely straight on the table. And you don't notice any difference until that compound, that chemical compound starts to wear off, and then that pattern starts to come back into them.
Yeah.
Which I thought was very interesting. And so we look at how are we going to influence someone's tissues with tools or our hands or whatever. This just kind of helped reinforce to me that, hey, we are really working with the central nervous system. And it's just, what we do is probably doing things, it's helpful. It's just probably not working in a way that we think it's working.
Yeah. And I think that's fine too, because story's just going to keep changing. Right. And this is our story right now. The story is probably the best it's been since before our time. Tools themselves, right? If people feel good, if it has some sort of effect on them, whether it's our narrative or their narrative, and the outcome is, hey, I feel good anecdotally, that's okay. And by the way, I liked your analogy about under anesthesia and kyphosis. I know they've talked about that with frozen shoulder as well. Same idea, putting people under, and all of a sudden that shoulder that has 20 to 30 degrees of movement is flying all over the place. Really interesting stuff. And for those of you that aren't familiar with that, you can Google that, and I think you can YouTube some of those things as well and watch that perform. It's fascinating stuff.
I heard a story that was told by Robert Schleip. Robert Schleip, he's one of the
Of course.
one of the foremost fascial experts in the world. But he talked about, so he's also a body worker. And he'll joke about it. He picked up body work in order to fund his research. So he's a rolfer. He's a trained rolfer. Back in the day, they put someone under anesthesia and did a rolfing session on this person. And then when they brought them back, they noticed no change. And so in Robert's words, he talked about the brain has to partake in the session. There has to be someone home when you're working with someone. Otherwise, the work is not effective. And I thought that was an interesting part to the anesthesia.
I hadn't heard that one. So that's a good one. You just learned me something right there.
It's not a published study. It's just an observation from him. But I think it does reinforce the need for someone to be home, for there to be that connection between the brain and the body while the work is happening.
I don't really seem to see it or hear it too much anymore. So I feel like we're getting away from the effects of bruising or leaving marks on people via cupping or scraping work. Do you see that that's kind of starting to we're getting away from that a little bit? Or is that just in my own head, in my own world?
I've taken a cupping class within the last 4 years, actually a few of them, and they were both. Some was, the bruising is good, some was no bruising because that's not effective. So I think we're still all over the place.
So then, right. So then how does one, because I don't really do it anymore. And I used to have my narrative because of what I learned in class. And then I thought, well, that doesn't make sense, right? It doesn't make sense that I'm leaving bruises on people or leaving, broken blood vessels or whatever the case is. So if that's being explained, what were some of the explanations as to why you would want to do that, since you took something fairly recently?
I attended the class for information. I wanted to learn more about cupping. I had never taken any cupping classes. I can tell you after taking the classes, I was not sold. I was actually less inclined to do cupping after taking the class. So that was my experience.
Yeah, that's fair. Well, some of what's talked about is some of the ideas that a couple people threw out was that we could sort of break things down. differently. And for those that are just listening to us, I use quotation marks, break things down,
The air
you
quotes.
know, via using tools. And you already kind of talked about it via your dissection story. How do we really know that a tool in our hand is breaking something down? And somebody talked about research. I personally didn't look up any research, but you did, correct?
A little bit.
What did you find?
I found what is typically found whenever I look up research in massage and bodywork type stuff is yes, potentially there is a benefit, but more research needs to be done. Inconclusive results.
Yeah, kind of like everything, kind of like you said. And by the way, there was a few years ago that I would have been a little brokenhearted by reading that, but I'm not brokenhearted by that anymore. Because there's just so many other ways to talk about it and talk about our results that I think are just sort of better than that.
And it doesn't mean that it's not helpful. It just means right now that we don't are we ever going to have enough information to concretely say, oh, yes, cupping is going to help with shoulder pain or something like that?
Probably not. And we only know what we know, right? It's the old, we're blinded by our expertise and we're blinded by what we know. And the more options we have in our option box, right? And the more understanding that we have, the more those blinders come off. But at the end of the day, if I took a class and said cupping helps with to improve mobility in the shoulder and works with these, well then sure. Somebody comes into me with a shoulder problem, I'm going to use cupping because that's what I know, right? And that's what I know to do. And my expectations as the therapist is, well, I learned in class that cupping should improve mobility of the shoulder, so then in fact, this should now work in my treatment room. And does it? No,
Inconclusive.
not like it did in class, that's for sure.
Oh man, things always work better in class, don't they?
They sure do.
And looking at cupping, the one benefit I see is you're able to go with the tissue in a direction that you wouldn't be able to do with your hands very easily. You're able to, I heard it one time called negative pressure, but
Mhm.
being able to pull things away from the bone, which, we can go, superior, inferior, we can go medial, lateral, but it's a little bit more difficult with our fingers to pull things away from the bone, which I think cupping may be beneficial there.
Yeah.
Which is really, it's just a different type of sensation if you boil it down to it. How do we know that that's really pulling things away from the bone? I don't, but it's that direction.
Interestingly enough, I kept a couple of my cups from my cupping set, and I've actually found that it's a great way to do some self massage work on myself, around my chest wall and around my shoulder girdle. Some people talked about this, but right, so sometimes our brain can sort of predict the outcomes if it knows what's happening and it can predict it. So that's why self massage may not always work. And I wonder sometimes if cupping works on me because it's just a different stimuli that my brain and nervous system isn't necessarily expecting, and
Yeah.
it feels a lot better for me.
You found a tool that works for you.
Found a tool that worked for me on myself,
That's right.
but I also know what I'm feeling versus when I'm doing it on somebody else, and it turns into this whole thing. I liked what Barb had to say too, and she said that if a client knows exactly what to expect each time, the result is not as good. So that kind of led me into that. So certainly changing up each session, can help people keep guessing all the time.
Another reason to bring in tools that I just thought about with you talking about that is bringing in some different approaches and saying, hey, you know what, we've been working with the shoulder a while, let's try some taping.
Sure.
Maybe it's not going to cure it, but it's a different way to approach it.
Yeah, I think those are probably some nice ways to do that. I would be deeply curious, and we could always, this is one of those episodes where we could probably do a part two, and it would be pretty interesting to bring somebody into that, from that world that's, in it and maybe teaching and talk to us about some of the current thoughts about that.
Absolutely.
Maybe down the road, maybe that's episode 30.
There we go. Episode 30, we're bringing in an expert on tools.
Yeah. When we're brave enough, I feel like we have to cross this threshold to get into like debates on our show.
Ooh.
Soapbox debates. What do you think of that?
Yeah, I don't like confrontation, so I would probably just agree with whatever they said.
I'm a French Canadian and I love confrontation. I can't help it though. It's in my blood. Any other thoughts? You usually ask me any other thoughts, but I guess any other thoughts? Are there any other types of tools that we didn't talk about?
Well, we do have the T bars. I
Yeah.
remember running across those in my neuromuscular days. I have some still, but I don't use them. They're more of a museum piece that I keep I keep in my drawer.
I'll tell you what, actually, it just came to mind. We talked about a lot of tools that are extensions of our hands, but what about I'm seeing a lot of stuff now with red light therapy, infrared therapy, therapists, using red lights in their room as they're treating, or infrared table pads or table warmers as they're treating. Those are certainly tools.
Absolutely. And I don't know enough about the red light stuff. I mean, I've gone down the rabbit hole a little bit, and same thing. You can find things to support it. And there's also stuff that says, it's total snake oil.
The famous Andrew Huberman, who a lot of people know, who's a well-known podcaster out there. He did a chat about red light therapy and infrared sauna, and from his take, they got pretty beat up on his show. Broke my heart a little bit because I use an infrared sauna in my practice.
But we go back to
But
what are your beliefs? If you feel like it's going to help you, it's going to be more effective.
that's right, and there are people that there's a small fan club for that infrared sauna in my practice, and people do swear by it.
And I think you just reminded me of another tool that I had a client bring in a while back. She brought in the Ashley Black Fascia Blaster. Are you familiar with
Ooh,
this?
man. Wow. This episode just got another 45 minutes longer.
I mean, without going too deep into it, she asked if she could bring this thing in, and I said I will entertain the idea, but I will not be using the Ashley Black Fascia Blaster on you. And she said, "Well, I'm just gonna bring it." She did her best to try to influence me to use that thing, but I don't know how it was built. I mean, it was pretty. I picked it up. It was pretty strong, and it looked like it had four little thumbs on it. Looked like a rake with four little thumbs. I mean, it was very strongly built, but I was like, I don't know how or why to use this thing. And she claimed that it really helped her low back pain. And I mean, I went down the rabbit hole and looked up why people would use it. And mainly it was for reducing the appearance of cellulite,
Yeah.
and people would use it on their abdomen and come out with bruises and stuff like that. And she said, no, that's not why I use it. I have chronic low back pain, and this is the only thing that helps it. And if you could use it on my low back, I would be ever grateful. And I said, I'm going to use my tools, and we'll see if that's helpful or not. So that's my experience with another type of tool, the Ashley Black Fascia Blaster. And we are not sponsors of the Fascia Blaster. We're just using her as a reference, just so you know.
So if you want to talk about it, and if you don't, we don't have to. But how was your result with that client?
It was several years ago, so I'm trying to remember the specifics. I think she really was just looking for someone to use that tool on her.
Yeah.
And I declined to use it. And so I think we worked with her a couple times, and she found someone that was going to use it on her. So I was not her
Okay.
person.
And people know what they know. So, right. So somebody comes in and says, well, I have this tool and this is the only thing that works for me. But I like that you gave them an opportunity to like try something different, which was your therapy, even though they weren't necessarily open to that. And I think you'd agree with this, and that people have to be open to education in order to move forward and get better as well. So that door has to be open. If it wasn't open at that time, that's okay. I'm not in the convincing business either. So if people don't want to be convinced, I'm definitely not in that business.
After our first session, I went and researched this thing. All the stuff that I saw, I was completely against it. But I
Yeah.
did not go into an argument with her about, I just said, hey, I'm not comfortable using this because I don't know how it's built. I don't want it to break while I'm using it, that kind of thing. I didn't say this is a piece of junk, you should not use it. I wasn't in
Totally.
there to convince her not to.
Right. Right. And I never, that's a good point too for our listeners, never demean the client as to what they're bringing in. Have a good conversation about it, have an educational, and good reasoning behind it. And I like what you said, by the way, it was pretty subtle. I don't want to break this. Right. So you're kind of covering your assets in a way, to say, hey, this looks good, but if something happens under my care, I don't want to be responsible for it. And that's just another great way, potentially out of something. What year was that?
I think it was probably 7 or 8 years ago.
Yeah, that sounds about right. I remember the following the social media soap operas over that and it seemed like I don't know where that creator is now and whatever happened with that.
And I'm curious, with Robert Schleif's recent research that came out and just basically stating that we're not really able to affect fascia, lengthen fascia, or do anything with fascia, how that has helped or hurt the fascia blaster business.
Well, and again, why would a tool do that over our hands anyway?
Space age polymers, it's amazing what they can do.
Right. And at the end of the day, do we want to break that down anyway? I feel like if we broke down our isolated tissue and broke it down, we would be like blobs.
Well, and one of the things I always say, and I know I've said it before, is if it worked, we'd be fixing people left and right. But also, we'd be messing people up left and right. And I don't see either of those happening.
Yeah. Well, I think there's probably plenty of people getting messed up out there,
Well,
but hey, that's none of my business. I'm like Kermit the Frog drinking my tea.
tell me what we learned today, Nate. Tell me what's a takeaway for you from this discussion.
The takeaway is that we can think about tools above and beyond massage guns, cupping tools, scraping tools, so on and so forth, right? Tools can be a table, for example, even if it's a stationary table, to me, that's a massage therapist's best tool, right? Your table and your seat and your hands, probably in no particular order. So I think those are your best tools. Communication is a tool, like you pointed out. Listening's a tool. Teamwork's a tool. And with that being said, that I think once again in our episode, the way that we go is that people that use tools, it's how we talk about them, right? If it feels good and feels like it's producing therapeutic outcome for our client, then at the end of the day, anecdotal evidence, if you will, is okay by me.
If it feels good, it feels good. I feel like I am not against tools at all.
Not at all.
And they're just another way to create a sensation in the body. And that may be the sensation that person needs for that day at that time. And you just stumbled upon something that just hit the right thing at the right time. I like tools. I just personally don't use them.
I'm with you on that. So for those listening, Ben, it sounds like you and I were on the same page. Once again, by the way, 14 episodes later, on the same page. We haven't had to fight each other on the show yet, which is fun. But yeah, no, absolutely. We're not here to be on any sort of platform, but yeah, I support it, do it if it feels good and that's part of your practice and that's what you love practicing. That's what massage is all about. It's like pizza.
Yeah. And by the
Right?
way, if you are a proprietor of massage tools and you want to sponsor Ben and Nate's questions we ask people on the internet by submitting some massage tools for us to use, we would love to. Also, if you sell pizza, we would also be open to being sponsored by a pizza chain.
That's right. And there is a guy. I don't know if you ever see him. He's a New England guy, David Portnoy, famous social media guy. He does his thing is called the One Bite, and he goes to pizza chains all the way. Typically like up and down the East Coast, primarily New England. He's a Boston guy, and that's his whole thing. He goes into pizza chains, gets a pizza, comes out, he takes one bite, and he makes his judgment right then and there by a rating, a scale of 1 to 10 rating.
How do you think people would react by taking one listen to the Ben and Nate's show?
I'm going to be like David Portnoy here, okay? So I just listened to the show. I'm going to chew it up. I'm going to go 9.4.
I like it.
That's it. That's my one bite rating. 9.4.
I can't wait until we get to episode 20 where we're going to host a gathering of massage therapists, and we're going to have a get together on YouTube, I think, through Zoom. So if you want to participate, stay tuned and we'll give you more details as we get closer to episode 20.
And we're going to look ahead to episode 15, where we're going to talk about success in the massage field and what you think makes you successful in the massage field.
That's going to be a great episode. I can't wait for that one, Nate.
Can't wait for that one either, buddy.
Awesome. Well, thanks again for a fantastic episode. It's always good to get in contact with you and other massage therapists in general. I just love to connect with massage therapists like I'm connecting with you.
Me too. I love it, buddy. And I'm going to be on the road connecting with massage therapists throughout the country over the next 2 months.
Where are you going to be at in the next month or so, Nate?
We're kicking it off. I'm going to be in Warwick, that's a mouthful, Warwick, Rhode Island, March 9th and 10th, and I have a sold out class. 2 weeks after that, I'm going to be in Dewey Beach, Delaware with another sold out class. That's going to be an AMTA event for the American Massage Therapy Association. And then I'm going to hop on my private myoskeletal jet and go across to San Francisco. We've still got some room there as we speak. And then I'm going to get back in that myoskeletal jet and shoot up to northwestern New Hampshire for another AMTA event. And we're going to just spread the word of massage therapy and myoskeletal alignment technique for a couple months.
I didn't know you had a private jet. That's pretty awesome.
Listen, 4 years with Eric Dalton, and that was my Christmas gift this year.
That's pretty sweet. Hey, I'm going to be on the road myself.
Tell me more.
I'm going to be in Charlotte, North Carolina, in the beginning of April, assisting with Eric Stevenson and the eye massage gang at the AMTA convention in North Carolina.
Very cool. What are you and Eric Stevenson going to be teaching that weekend?
I don't know exactly the name of the workshop, but it revolves something around deep tissue work without using your thumbs is the basis of it. Come see me in Charlotte.
How can people, is that through AMTA? People would register through AMTA?
You register through the North Carolina AMTA chapter.
Go check out Ben and say hi to him.
I'd love to have you say hi. Let us know that you listen to the show. So come find Nate and I wherever we're at. Just say hi. I listen to the show.
Do it.
Thank you, everyone, for listening. Thank you, Nate.
Thank you, Ben. I'll look for you on episode 15.
Sounds great. We'll see you
on the internet. Bye-bye.
On the internet.
Hey everybody, thanks for tuning in for another episode of Ben and Nate's Questions That We Ask People on the Internet. And how can people find us out there?
Just go to our Facebook page called Ben and Nate's Questions That We Ask People on the Internet. Find out the question of the week and interact with us and let us know what you think and submit your own questions. Where else can they listen to us at, Nate?
You can watch us on YouTube if you want to watch our episodes. You can also tune into one of your favorite streaming services such as Spotify or Apple Podcasts.
Thanks for watching, everyone.
Thanks for watching. See you next time.